Evening everyone, hello and welcome to the stream. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Anto and today we're going to be doing some world building stuff for my homebrew setting of Ashk. Ignore this monstrosity, my usual arm is broken, so this one is the only one I've got and I can only get it right in my face. Before we dive into it too much, can I just get you to confirm that you can see and hear me all okay? Because don't want to get half an hour into a stream and realize that nobody can see and hear me, because that would suck. See and hear, all okay. Perfect. Okay. Oh. We can even see the chat. Let's move the chat box down here a little bit so it looks a little better. And then I'm going to confirm that the chat is coming up. The chat is coming up, so we are good to go. So let's switch scenes here. And today we're going to be working on stuff for SIDEQUEST. So SIDEQUEST is my monthly digital magazine. It comes out every month. Issue 3 is coming out in July. It's packed with 5th edition compatible content. And we're going to do some work on some of the content that's going to be coming up in issue 3, which is going to be the Ashk Gazetteer, which is an overview of my campaign setting of Ashk. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but we're going to be working on the city of Kadim, which is the city of mages. So if I go ahead here and jump to the relevant page, we've got the map of Kadim, and what we're going to be doing today is building out some of the locations. I've already done some work on some of the locations, but I need to go ahead and finish this out. So I thought I'd throw up a stream, chat with you all, talk about what is going on. So the cover, yeah, the cover is sick. The cover is a piece by Dean Spencer, who is a stock artist who does amazing stuff, who I used for the covers for both issue 1 and 2 as well. And he's going to be, his art is pretty much throughout all of the issues as well. There is some custom commissioned art in this issue, but that's secret for when it's actually released. So you can see this issue is going to have information on that city of mages, which is turning out to be a lot more information than I thought it was going to be going in. It's also going to have some new conditions and status effects for 5th edition, some expanded power word spells, a new monster, and maybe some more stuff as well. So before we jump in and start talking about Kadim, the city of the mages, the magic city in my setting, we kind of need to touch base and talk a little bit about what has been going on in my game world recently. I know that a lot of you that watch the streams and that follow my stuff used to really enjoy the campaign diaries I used to do for the setting of Ashk, and a lot has changed in the last couple of months, maybe 2 months. So the party that I had been running through for about 45 weeks, pretty much the original starting party that had started the campaign in those campaign diaries, died, just TPK, all except one of them died. They were traveling between 2 cities. They came across a dungeon. The dungeon was heavily signposted as being well above their level. It's something I warned them about when we started, that this would be a sandbox world and that there would be some locations that would be well beyond their level, and that they would kind of stumble into them and they could be deadly. And there were dozens of signs in this place written in dozens of ancient scripts basically saying, stay out of here, this is bad news, you will die. They ignored it, pressed on, had a bunch of fights, didn't rest, pressed on, had more fights, still didn't rest, pressed on to the main fight, and then over the course of 2 or 3 sessions in this one big fight, all but one of the characters died. So we had to roll up a whole bunch of new characters, and I was kind of excited about this because I'd been feeling a little bit stifled for a while anyway, so a fresh batch of characters and a kind of soft restart really excited me. I was looking forward to running solo sessions for all of the characters, which I did. A couple of them chose to pair up and be siblings, so I ran kind of combination sessions for the siblings. and everything was going good. And then they almost got TPK'd in their very first adventure with this new party, in which they were trying to steal basically Pandora's box. I was using the Pisces of Pandemonium from the Mythic Odysseys of Theros as kind of inspiration, which is in turn inspired by Pandora's box. This mythical Ark of the Covenant style vessel that if you open it, has the power to end the world. So they were hired to heist it, and when they arrived, they realized another group was already in the process of heisting it. A bunch of shenanigans ensued, and based on some really poor decisions and some really bad rolls, the Pisces got opened and this chaos was released. They had to fight a bunch of demons that kind of spawned immediately when it was opened. And then they won their fight, but then the guards turned up and surveyed the situation, and they're like, we don't know who you are, we don't know what's happened here, we're going to take you in for questioning. And one of the characters just stood their ground and was like, I've got 1 hit point, but I'm not surrendering. So it was another fight when almost all of them had been down in the fight previous. One of them got captured. It was a whole thing. Samwise, they are level 8 at the minute. So functionally, it was almost like we'd had another TPK. We'd lost one of the party members because they'd got captured, and they immediately made choices that mean that that character isn't going to be coming back. And then another couple of the players, after playing that first session with their new characters, expressed that they weren't completely happy with their characters. And they had been mentioning for a while now that they wanted a slightly different kind of play. They wanted more magic items, because 5th edition as the base system isn't fantastic for providing a high magic item setting, because nothing is priced and it can throw the balance out of whack. But they still wanted loads of magic items. So I went away, I did some thinking, and I thought that the opening of this Pandora's box style, Ark of the Covenant style item gives us the perfect jumping off point to radically change the setting. So I put together a pitch document, which I posted in the Discord yesterday, the day before? Yesterday, I think. Setting up my proposed kind of new campaign to them. So it would still be an Ashk. It would be 1 to 2 years after the events of the Total Party Kill and the first session with these new characters. And essentially, I proposed a campaign setting that is mid-apocalypse. So it wouldn't be post-apocalypse where the world has already been lost. They would be playing out the latter days, the end of days as the campaign. This arc has been opened and unleashed chaos and corruption. Beasts and monsters for hundreds of miles have been corrupted by its force and have basically been given uber powers. And we'd skip ahead a couple of years. They would be playing as monster hunters, and the whole setting would now be the kind of dying breaths, the last gasp of civilization in Ashk as everyone's retreated into the city-states, and the deserts between have become just rife with this corruption. So the entire economy will have changed. Magic items would be much more prevalent because there'd be a lot more magic in the world now, and the magic items are necessary to fight the monsters. So the premise of this kind of soft reboot of the campaign is going to be the players are playing a group of monster hunters who operate out of the city-states, and they go out into the wilds, fight these corrupted monsters, bring back bits of the monsters, and then trade them either in exchange for gold to buy magic items or use parts of the monsters to forge powerful magic items. So if they want common or maybe some of the uncommon items, they can probably buy those. But if they want rare and legendary and artifact level items, those are going to require them go out, slay specific beasts, get the components from them, bring them back to a city, spend the downtime to have them forged. And all the players were really excited about that. We've got a couple of people changing character, a few of them staying with these new characters that were rolled up after the TPK, and I'm really excited by it, but it has fundamentally changed Ashk as a place. So a lot of the information that's going to be in this gazetteer will still be relevant, but my setting will start moving away from the Ashk setting that's been in the Gazetteer. And one thing I'm considering is in either issue 4 or 5, kind of doing a Gazetteer where it deals with this apocalypse event and have an article going alongside with it of kind of how to set up your world building to be an apocalypse, not post-apocalypse, but in the apocalypse, because I think there's a very different feel to those two things. But I wanted to give you some context of the things that are going to be happening, because a lot of this information I'll be writing with that in mind. So, as an example, the City of the Mages is run by the Sorcerer King Nasir Sekhmet. Now, there's been mention in my kind of lore up until this point of him having visions and being spoken to and being told that he's kind of destined to unify the mages of Ashk and kind of lead them out of the darkness, which positions him excellently to be the Sun King. So post-apocalypse, he will be the Sun King. He will have been crowned by the High Priestess of the Church of the Everlight, which is the Sun Goddess, and he is the Sun King. He considers himself to be the last kind of bastion against the darkness and the chaos that is spreading. Kevin asks, how would you ensure the tension is still there if the PCs can't stop the apocalypse? So, as far as they are aware, the apocalypse is at the moment kind of contained to Ashk. The Apathian Empire, which is a neighboring political state, has kind of cordoned off Ashk so that the corruption can't spread outside of this land, and the same has happened on kind of all of its borders. And Ashk is sort of being left to die, but it doesn't fully know it. So it's in the apocalypse, but a lot of the world doesn't know that that's the case. I know it's the case, the players know it's the case, the characters won't necessarily know that they are in the full throes of the apocalypse. Like Mark says, the world is going to end, but that doesn't mean it has to be tomorrow. Oh, that went down the wrong hole. Lemon and honey, owie. So I'm kind of glad that this issue is focusing on Kadim, because Kadim is really well suited and positioned for this kind of apocalypse, because it is a city of mages. Up until this point, Ashk has very much been hesitant of wizards, sorcerers, all the arcane spellcasters, because through their history, magic has been a source of great strife and turmoil for them. So in a lot of places in Ashk, up until this point, up until kind of the calamity, the releasing of the chaos, sorcerers, wizards, arcane users of magic have been stigmatized, and most of them find their way to the city-state of Kadim, which is very accepting of sorcerers. And if I zoom in here a little bit, there are schools for each of the school of magics, like centers of learning dedicated to those specific centers of magic throughout the city. And the only way you can own property in the city is if you're a mage. You can only vote if you're a mage. You can only be involved in the justice system if you're a mage, all those kind of things. Bob says the corruption may be trying to spread outside of Ashk, so it does give them a reason. If it does, the other countries will be outright destroying the country. Yeah, basically. So one of the players is rolling up a new character that is descended from the royalty of the country we played in our last campaign in Valeroth, and they have been touched by this corruption, and they're in Ashk specifically to kind of wipe it out, both so that they can, save the world, but also so that they can get rid of the corruption within themselves. Kadim is a full-on mageocracy. So I'll kind of zoom in here and we'll look at a little bit of the map. You can see that there's different coloured text. That's just so I know which locations I've written out stuff for already. In the final thing, they'll all be black and white. So right up top, we've got a divination school, which is built up into the mountains. It's going to have a big planetarium to observe the stars and kind of divine things. And then we've got kind of almost slum housing outside the walls, some farmland to do crop growing and things like that. And then we've got the walls of the city and the inner city, which is where the kind of mageocracy would start. Kevin asks, how do you define mage? Sounds like it's just wizards. So I use mage as the broad term for any arcane spellcaster. So it would be wizards and sorcerers. I can't remember whether warlocks are arcane or divine. It's anyone that doesn't get their magic from the gods. So the people of Ashk are much more forgiving of divine magic because they are very pious people. So clerics and paladins and those who get their magic from the gods are much more accepted in Ashk society because they see it as a gift from the gods. Whereas the arcane magic, it's almost like you are a greedy and hungry, power-hungry individual and you're stealing magic. The magic should be reserved for those that follow the gods. So I use mage to kind of define any arcane spellcaster. Hey, Nave, you missed a reasonable amount. The world is ending, essentially. Ashk is in the middle of an apocalypse, and all the players are going to have to deal with it. Half of them are dead. All good stuff. So inside the wall here, we have a whole bunch of buildings. So let's start with the NPS, because I think it's an interesting place. So the NPS is the Magical Protection Service, and that is like the government of the city, the law of the city, if you like. They run the city guard, they run the court and the justice system, and they are responsible for providing magical protection for businesses and people within the city. So they are a whole faction, kind of sanctioned by the Sun King, and they will go to businesses and they'll say, right, okay, we can set you up with a package of alarm spells, of golems to defend your property. We can notify you the second anyone enters your property when between the hours that you've specified. We can have trained groups of kind of battle wizards ready to be dispatched if someone breaks into your property. We can set up forbiddances and these kind of high-level spells for your property, all for a price. And that operates throughout the city, and they kind of strong-arm businesses into it. So there'd be a lot of potential there for businesses that aren't signed up with the NPS to kind of get leaned on by them and to contact the players and be like, look, we're being leaned on by the NPS, can you help us out? Or the NPS could hire the player characters to be like, okay, we need you to go and recover some outstanding payments from these people. Then, like I said, there is a school, a specific house of learning for each of the schools of magic. My favorite is the Evocation School. So if I go ahead here and just hide the symbol, you can see the Evocation School is a destroyed building, and the story behind that is that a student kind of meddled with an eternal flame spell and set the building on fire, and the original building kind of burned down with this eternal flame. And now the staff at the school are kind of constantly putting out this eternal flame only for it to spark back up. So the building is always on fire and always smoldering. And the actual school itself is underground in kind of tunnels underneath the school. And I love the image of just arriving thinking that you're going to be going to this Institute of Learning and just coming across this smoldering wreck of a building. It's very in keeping with how fireball happy evocation wizards tend to be. So go ahead and put that there, otherwise I'll forget that. Then we've got the Courthouse, where the NPS will dole out the justice under the authority of the Sun King. For particularly special cases, the Sun King might preside over them himself, but for the most part, the NPS do it. Then there's the Lodge, which is a place where artificers gather to make magic items. So Kadim, pre-corruption, is one of the only places in Ashk where magic items are kind of made for sale and where you could go and potentially buy a magic item. So that is where they're all made kind of pre-corruption. Things will change a little bit post-corruption, the lodge will probably expand, and eventually it will be this kind of whole block, and it'll be a whole district of artificers and wizards churning out magic items, like wands to equip those without magic to be able to just charge into the front lines, like really cheap fireball ones, like a one-use fireball spell wand that you would just give to a basic troop, and their whole purpose in a battle would just be to charge out, fire off the fireball, and then their lives are basically useless at that point. They're there to just kind of pad out the battle, while the hunters, who'll be the player characters and kind of character classes, are out there slaying the monsters. Then we've got the Auric Bank, which is possibly the most secure place in the entire continent. So centuries ago, this place was guarded by a gold dragon, and all the surrounding villages were constantly under attack from this gold dragon. And eventually the elders of the village reached an agreement with the dragon and said, look, we will give you all of our treasure. You can hoard it to protect it if you stop burning our villages. Like, we will voluntarily give you all of our treasure to hold on to. Just please stop burning our villages. And then over the centuries, that dragon has aged and become more and more powerful and more greedy. And now this whole bank is set up to be a dragon's lair. So deep in the bowels under the earth, in the vaults of this bank, there is an ancient gold dragon who kind of hoards the wealth, and they bring people deposit their gold in. The bank will go and give the majority of it to the dragon and then use the rest of it as a normal bank would. But the dragon also serves to protect that vast kind of quantity of treasure. What else have we got here? We've got the Saffat Library, which is kind of the foremost center of knowledge in this part of the world, and is one of the best places to go for information on the material realm. And then we have the Sun King's Court, where the Sun King lives. Peter, this was designed in Incarnate, which is the first time I've used. This is the second map I made in Incarnate. After picking it up, I haven't used it in probably 6-7 years. Maybe not that long, but it's been a long time since I've used Incarnate, and they've made a lot of changes. And for city maps, Incarnate has gotten real good. At some point in the relatively near future, I will probably do a video on Incarnate and on making cities specifically, because it's really good for it. The dragon under the bank is very Harry Potter, but I wanted specifically it to be a gold dragon, because they are renowned as being kind of the most greedy for wealth, or gold specifically. So I wanted that gold dragon under there to not be a prisoner, but to be kind of a willing participant and kind of partner of it. Kevin says, is the Saffat Library a defensible position as the Sun King's front door? So yeah, the library and the Sun King's Court are built on this plateau, and they both have kind of steps carved into the side of the mountain as the only access point, both of which are choke points that could be defended, and they're raised up, and it kind of keeps all of that valuable stuff together. And then obviously you've got City of Mages that could be rallied to defend you if necessary. So what we need to do, would the dragon loan out the gold, providing more gold is paid back? Exactly. That's kind of the deal they've got. They'll give the dragon this increasing hoard, because more and more people will bring their money to the bank to store it in the bank. So by not burning the city down, the dragon keeps amassing wealth. They just take a little bit at a time to kind of pay out to people. So we're going to go here. Everything's in alphabetical order. So I've already added stuff for the bank, the church, Meteor Metalworks, which is the smith, the rune smith, which is for making all the runes and things, the scribe offices, the Thaumaturgy brewery, which is run by Yuan T, who's immune to poison, and basically uses like mild poisons in all of the beverages, including a an ale or a beer called Disintegrate, and it's like notoriously strong ale, and it's one of the strongest in the land. And then, so the first step is the lodge. So we need to have a look at the lodge, which is here, and then we're going to go ahead and start figuring out information about the lodge. So the way I've been doing this thus far, you can see I've got some headings. I do a little spiel about what the location is, and then we have a section for NPCs. You can see I've just copy and pasted from the library just to give me my headings, and then we have a plot hook. So at the end of this, there'll be kind of 60-70 NPCs for this location. You can see which page. I've moved it. So these are kind of some of the art that I'm considering putting in, some of the stock art. So I just keep copies to remind myself. And then if I go ahead and I am making everything all kinds of hard for myself here. There we go. Like this. I'll drag that up just so you can see kind of what's going on with the NPCs. So this is the table for the Evocation School's NPCs. So you'll get a name and then a description. So Tassaf Surth is an elderly watermill Ganassi professor whose hair and beard have almost frozen in his old age. So there's going to be 60 or 70 NPC entries like this throughout the city. Hello, Claire. How are we? And then you'll get a plot hook for almost every location. So this really will be a place that you can just drop into your game. You'll have a map, you'll have detailed information on most of the locations in there, dozens of NPCs to just pick up and use, and dozens of plot hooks to give your players direction. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the lodge. So the way I've been doing it is I usually start off by just writing almost like a scratch version of what the location is going to be. So very basic information. And then I tweak it and go back and change and do little bits here and there and back and forth. So the lodge is run by a group of artificers. Artificers who make, enchant, construct. Let's just go make for now. Make magic items. For create. That's the word. That is the word. Create magic items for sale and trade. That will get expanded on. But it will do for now, because what I've been doing is I've been starting by doing a little hook, and then I grab a table here, copy that, go into here, and change the name of the table. This program is called Affinity Diviner, Affinity Publisher. It's from the Affinity suite of tools by Serif. For those that are interested in how I make all this stuff, it's a really great suite of tools, very much like the Adobe suite, like Photoshop and InDesign, but substantially cheaper, and it's a one-time purchase. I've used the Affinity suite for quite a while now, and it's really good stuff. So this is going to be the Lodge NPCs. So I think I only want 4 people in here, so let's go ahead and get rid of a couple of these rows, get rid of them, and then start by thinking what kind of characters I want in here. So when I think of artificers, I think of gnomes, so we're going to have a gnome of some sort. I really enjoyed the imagery of the artificer in Tasha's Cauldron, I believe it was. So I'm going to go on D&D Beyond, and I'm going to find Tasha's Cauldron, and I'm going to pull up the image of the artificer. And we're going to take a look at what artificers are in those images, because they're really, really cool. So there's a gunslinger there. I want the armorer The armorer, I believe. Armorer, there we go. That's the one. So we've got an elf and tiefling. If I go ahead and nope, where is my web browser? Grab this, that, and then do that. There we are. So those two, that image of the two artificers from Tasha's Cauldron, from the moment I saw it, I was like, that is so cool. I want to incorporate them. So we're going to go ahead and add an elf and a tiefling as kind of an homage to them. So we want an elf male and then a female tiefling. And so we've got a gnome, an elf, a tiefling, and I like the idea of a warforged being there making magic items. Warforged male. So then we'll go through and we'll just think about who these people are. So gnomes, when I think of gnome artificers, I think of the classic tinkerer, the kind of semi-eccentric, almost unreliable feel to them. Like lots of experimentation. So I like the idea of this gnome being elderly. So an elderly gnome male tinkerer who is renowned for his explosive experiments. And then we'll come up with a name for him later. So the elf male, we'll put them kind of middle-aged. Elf male, responsible for testing, for field testing new items. So the idea of them getting that kind of suit of magical armor that the artificer can have and is kind of depicted in the image from Tasha's Cauldron and going out and field testing it. I like the idea of them going out into the world and experimenting. Elderly Null, the Claw. Tiefling female, so we want her to be young tiefling female with a I like the idea of the tiefling being kind of a stern and no nonsense character. Who's always serious and never takes a joke. Never cracks jokes. So someone that's just always kind of cracking the whip. Oh, the dregs at the bottom with all of the lemon juice and all of the honey. Oh my lord. And then the Warforged male, I like the idea of the Warforged male being kind of obsessed with the idea of enhancement and kind of always physically enhancing themselves. And a playful disposition is perfect. So Warforged male, obsessed with self-enhancement, who continues to build new parts for himself. Warforged male obsessed with self-enhancement who continues to build new parts for himself. He has a playful disposition. And friendly tone. How does withdrawals from the Dragon Bank work? I doubt the dragon's happy about giving up parts of its hoard. So part of the agreement with the dragon will be if you let people make withdrawals and people are going to bring all of their wealth here, say they have 100 gold, they're going to bring 100 gold, you'll get 100 gold. It's unlikely they'll take out that entire sum of wealth at once. So they might take out 10 or 20 or 50. But in that time, someone else is going to bring 100 gold, and over time, it will build and the wealth will continue to grow. Rallosaurus Rex. We're currently building out information for a city full of mages, and the map was made with Incarnate, and the program I'm using to design everything is the Affinity Publisher. So we're going to go ahead and not do that because that will ruin absolutely everything. We're going to go ahead and grab these elements here and resize our box. So you can see you're getting a peek at the new trade dress for SideQuest. So this month's issue is the first that's got all the fancy new graphics, which was done by a graphic designer called Ramona. She did an awesome job of doing all the swirly details and putting together all the elements that make up the new boxes and things. And then we use them to make the tables and things. So we're just going to tidy everything up. Nave says, it's basically as a customer, I'm giving all my money for nothing, then I'm allowed to make loans at interest. No, it would, for the customers, it works like a regular bank. You take your money there, you put it in, you can make deposits, you will get interest. The bank will invest parts of the hoard, but it is protected by a gold dragon that considers the hoard to be his. At the moment, that relationship works well and is friendly, but there is always chance, especially kind of post corruption and mid-apocalypse, where this is going very nearly in the future, that dragon would decide, I don't want to stay in the city anymore, I'm going to take my hoard and leave, and that would properly destabilize the region. Claire, I have put a placeholder name for the tavern and called it the Rampant Griffin, but I am open to suggestions for names for the tavern if people have them. Affinity is a paid program. I believe the regular price is about $50. It's a one-time purchase. There's 3 different programs. They all work together. So I have the option to open this document in any program and use the different functionality, just like in Photoshop and the Adobe Suite. They regularly run 50% sales, though. They've done 2 or 3 of them this year. So if it's something anyone is interested in, hold off. I usually, when they do sales, I will usually tweet about it because I love the program. I don't get paid anything by them. It's not an affiliate thing, but people do regularly ask what I use to make all of my design stuff. And any money I can take away from Adobe and Photoshop and that whole parasitic suite, I'm more than happy to do. We know some of... Oh, it's 50% off right now. I thought it had ended. I didn't realize it was still going. So we're going to need some names for these 4 NPCs. So if you have names for an elderly gnome male, a middle-aged elf male, a young female tiefling, or just a male warforged, throw them in the comments and we'll throw them in chat and we'll see what we can get. Matt, the feel we're going for this city is at the moment more kind of serious with a few little sort of cheeky, goofy elements thrown in there, like the Evocation School being permanently burned down because fireball. That is going to change in world in the future, but not in what we're writing here. So, like I said, we're in a weird state where the Gazetteer stuff that I'm writing and where my game has gone and where the kind of current present day of my world is are starting to move apart because we're having this apocalypse event. Enin Yog, Elderly Gnome, Body Knock, Nipper Timbers, Mordecai. I like Mordecai for the elf. Mordecai for the elf. Body Knock. Body Knock is a great name. Fnipper Timbers. I don't know about Fnipper, but I like Timbers. So we'll go Body Knock Timbers. E9 Yog. That I'm going to go with Mordecai for the elf rather than E9 Yog because I would stumble to pronounce it too quickly. And I know I would get hung up on it and have to kind of rehearse it to myself. Body Knock's like a Lady of the Night name. Dear me. Head out the gutter, people. So we need to go and lodge. So go here into my paragraph settings and we need to change the spacing. One? No, that's not the one. I can't remember how do we do this? That's how. We need to move that because otherwise we get some overlap. So the lodge is run by a group of artificers who create magic items for sale and trade. I'm kind of stuck on that at the minute. So we're going to come back to the lodge. Oh, we've got plot hook though. Plot hook. So first paragraph. For artificer level plot hooks, I want to go in the realm of magical items. So either the creation of magical items, the protection of magical items, something related to magical items. I already have a plot hook in the Metalworks where a character wants to make a hammer and they want the heart of a Behir to be able to give it the power to command lightning, like Mjolnir. So I don't really want to go and find component for this item. The elf has gone missing while field testing. Perfect. So we go Mordecai. The elf has gone missing while field testing. An experimental new magic item. So we need a name for the tiefling because I imagine that the tiefling is kind of the shot caller and the whip cracker who will dispatch the players. So I'm going to fire up a tiefling name generator. See whether anything jumps out at me. The lodge giving it PCs experimental magic items to field test would be a good fit. That would be cool. We have been going now for about 45 minutes. So female names, Shias. I like Shias. Shias. And then we want a family name. I'm missing the R in Mordecai. There will be spelling mistakes all throughout this. In this kind of first stage where I'm blasting through writing the information, I try not to stop to correct myself because then I spend all my time correcting myself. I just get it all down on the page and then come back later. Janice for the tiefling sounds like a whip cracking name. Yes, that would be a whip cracking name. I like Shias though. But I definitely think we can go for kind of Janice vibes on her. Whistlebee. Changing or dropping a single letter from a name is a great way of making names that sound right but aren't just names from our world and culture. That is very true. A very good tip. translating into different cultures and different languages is also a really good pick. So as Ashk is a desert setting, some of my go-tos are looking at Arabic words and names. If I want something for kind of an Apathian held empire or an Apathian empire held area, then I look more towards Greco-Roman kind of nomenclature. Shias Zet. I like Zet. Zet is cool. Thank you, Mr. Moses. But dropping letters, rearranging letters is a good way to make names. Another thing that I like to do in terms of kind of translations is I'll take a trait of a character. So if a character is brave, I'll go and I'll translate the word brave into a bunch of different languages and see if there is a kind of set of words or combination of words or a word I can adjust based on the translation of a keyword describing the character, and then I'll use that. It's how I kind of seed traits about my characters before the players meet them. So I'll say this character is named X, and that name actually translates to a mark about their character. It's not something the players pick up on necessarily straight away, but it's something nice in the background for me. Tenacity, Tina City. Tenacity is Tina City is too good, so we'll go Shias Tenacity because that plays into us. And then we just need a Warforged name, and I like Zet, so we're going to go Zet for the Warforged name. Zetna. X, I'm gonna give it to you. I do like X names, like Zetna. X, I can give it to you. I like that. So we know who our NPCs are. I'm not dragging in the table into the relevant places at the minute, even though I've written half a dozen NPC tables already. That's just because once everything is all written, then I have to start working on specific layout, and I don't know where the breaks are going to be for information, so I don't bother dragging the things that are going to break the flow until the end. Colbane from the Warforged. That Colbane is a really cool Warforged name. Zetna Colbane. I like that. Colbane. Cool, so we know who our NPCs are for the Lodge, and Mordecai the Alpha's gone missing while field testing an experimental new magic item. Shias. Has asked the characters, is this appearance? I know that that's wrong, I can see that's wrong looking at it. Ask the characters to investigate his disappearance. So that's a hook for the Artificer Lodge. So the way this is all set up is players will get their map, or the way I'm imagining it is the players will get their map. They'll go, oh, the lodge looks cool, let's go to the lodge. Then they arrive at the lodge. You get some information about the lodge, which I will go and expand when it's coming to me. You get a selection of NPCs that you as the Dungeon Master have a little nugget of information about their personality, but you can expand on, so you're not bound to it. You just know, like, Shias is stubborn and kind of cracking the whip type person, so you can take that and run with it. And then you get a plot hook. So the magical item, I probably won't name because I don't want to prescribe too much in these plot hooks, because then you get into the territory of each one being kind of a little written adventure, and there isn't kind of space for that. Or it's not so much there isn't space for that, just the time that would take would be significantly more. So leaving things vague and evocative is what I prefer. Like an experimental new magic item sounds super cool. I trust that most DMs will have something will come to them. Welsh is a very good language to pull for D&D related stuff. I pull a lot of Welsh influence for my dwarves. Typically, I know a lot of people use Welsh for elves. I like using Polish for elves because I think it really plays into that Fae aspect of them, and kind of almost like the Witcher vibes in terms of kind of Fae. And I use a lot of Welsh base for my dwarves. So the lodge is done. Then we need Court of the Sun King. So we've already got some information on the Sun King himself, on Nasir Sekhmet. So he was visited by a voice in a dream. According to the stories, the voice told Sekhmet that he was destined to be the king who joined the mages of Ashk under one banner and lead the people of Ashk out of the darkness. I wrote that before I knew that the players were going to inadvertently create an apocalypse level event, and that the darkness would be possibly a literal darkness. But it does fit really well. Mark asks, remind me, what do you use Aussie for? Is it halflings? Yes, it is halflings. Halflings are Australian. Gnomes are Scottish. Dwarves are Welsh. Elves are Polish. Orcs are kind of, I think, Mongolian, that kind of region. I use Moroccan for my gnolls. I use a lot of Hebrew and Hindi for my Ganassi, depending on what kind of Ganassi I need. I can't remember what else I use. I'll fire up my my list of races and I can find out the language bases. So Azamar have French accents, so Celestial in my setting is a very French sounding language. Halflings tend to have kind of Cornish first names and descriptive last names, if I'm doing that, but their accents are Australian, because just angry little halflings just make me laugh. Hebrew and Hindi don't sound alike, no, but I apply them depending on which kind of Ganassi or which beings from the various elemental planes I'm using, because they're both such old languages. I think they fit in my mind with the kind of ancient feel and the reverence that I associate with beings from the elemental planes. So I think they're great fits for that. So within the Court of the Sun King, Sun King. Right, so the Court of the Sun King, Sekhmet. Oh, it went down the wrong hole. I don't speak all the languages. I will watch videos for them or emulate celebrities or people I know. I'm semi-decent at accents, so I have kind of a base of accents that I will draw on. And then a lot of the time I won't do accents for the languages that I'm not as comfortable with. So Polish is a great example. Can't do a Polish accent. I just use it to inform me when it comes to kind of naming conventions for a lot of my elves. So especially the elves that are kind of true descendants of the Fae. So in my setting, there are a subset of elves called white elves. They are completely ivory skinned, white hair, like white eyes. And those kind of elves, I'll draw on Polish words and Polish names to kind of pull into that. I bet at least one of the player will make a checkmate pun with his name. Absolutely. Like, if they get themselves into a situation where they have to fight him and beat him and drop a checkmate, perfect situation. So Sekhmet's ruled Kadim for a period of time, a fairly long period of time, which means he needs to be an elder race. He's probably ruled for longer than a human lifespan. So I'm leaning towards elf. Not necessarily Feyborn white elf, but kind of a common elf. And then, so he's been ruling for probably a couple decades. An Azamar could be cool. An Azamar could be very cool. And it gets that celestial, I am the chosen of God. Yeah, Azamar. Azamar's much cooler. Has ruled the city of Kadim for decades. Before he was crowned Sun King. I don't think it will be an inherited situation. It's going to be a case of he founded the city. In which case, Nasir Sekhmet founded the city of Kadim. And if we're going to found it, we probably don't want decades. We want centuries. You are right, Matt. I did say longer than a human lifespan. That's why we're going to go centuries instead. Go Azamar, go centuries. After being shown its location in a vision. The being that he would one day rule all of Ashk. As the Sun King. And then we will go description of the court. Because that's the kind of noodly, detaily writing that I'll just do from my own brain. Does Nazir have advisors who may or may not be plotting against him? Almost certainly. Could there have been a city here before the current Kadim the king led? Was it burned to the ground or something? There was a city here, so on the previous page I mentioned that if Sekhmet finds the ruins of a previous city that he builds on, and they had been kind of lost to the sands of time, and this voice kind of led him to bring it, to kind of find it. Easier to conquer Ashk when the world is ending. Yeah, Sekhmet is going to be a much bigger deal going forward now that they've opened that Pandora's box and the whole world is kind of crumbling down. So I will probably rework this a little bit to kind of have the kind of present day of the gazetteer in this issue be like he's just been crowned Sun King, and then by the time the players interact with him in this apocalypse scenario, he'll have been Sun King for a little bit, a couple of years, because we're doing a time jump, and he will be in the process of kind of gathering force, and he is like, I am going to go out there, I personally am going to lead the charge to beat back the darkness, and then I will rule Ashk as its rightful king. Azamar live up to 160 years. Does this track in this city, or is the Azamar older, or is it different in this setting? I am happy for him to have extended life. There's plenty of ways for creatures to elongate their life. In D&D, you know, monks stop aging, wizards can do all kinds of crazy things, and he is a sorcerer king, so he does command a level of magic. So I am happy for him to live past what the standard Azamar would. And then just be Sean Connery, even in the Highlander, he was Scottish. Yes, he was. You may call me Shun King. Yeah, Shun King. Mr. Moses said, I like leaving it a little up to the DM, and I love the chosen by God angle. Yeah, me too. Raymond says, how do I homebrew races? I will usually kind of take a look at the existing races. So most of them will give you changes to your ability scores. I'm not too bothered about that because I just let my players freely choose. But then they will all have similar kind of traits. So I will look through, see how many traits they have, and then try and come up with similarly powered and a similar number of traits for them based on what I have in mind for them. So, for example, if I wanted to bring one of the races from my sci-fi setting into fantasy, they are a very aggressive four-armed race. So I would give them some kind of extra attack style ability, probably a heavy penalty, and I would incorporate their aggression in some way, their kind of ferocious fighting style, into their kind of features and traits. Matt says the doesn't age thing could be presented to the general public as a further confirmation the king is chosen by a deity. Absolutely. The Shun King must be voiced as Sean Connery. Yes, adventurers. Welcome to Kadim. I am the Shun King. Oh, God. Like, when it comes time that they meet him, I won't be able to think of anything else, and I'll be like, right, okay, this guy's Sean Connery. Absolutely. And just, they get to a situation where they're having an epic fight, and he's like, you cannot defeat me, adventurers. I'm the Shun King. No. We've got to move away from the Shun King. So we want a plot involving the Court of the Sun King. And plot hooks with this level of power, or with a person or a place involved in this level of power, are always difficult because players tend to be really self-sabotaging, and it's been established that the Shun King is incredibly powerful in the city, commands the law, and is kind of like the principal lawmaker, etc. So we don't want the plot hook to kind of be something like you need to directly oppose the Shun King. But if there is a plot to assassinate the Shun King, that could be something the players get embroiled up in. Yeah, for 100%, definitely. So recently made. Ah, I see you've come to assassinate me. You will fail. You will not succeed. Oh, the Sun King's gonna have to be Sean Connery, isn't he? Why? An assassin recently made an attempt on the Sun King's life. Welcome to the jewel in Ashk's crown. Stop feeding me quotes. Made an attempt on the Sun King's life. The players, the characters. Consistency is important. Have been hired to investigate the attempt and find the assassin. Perfect. That's nice, but investigate. That's really wrong. So next up, we've got the Library of Saffat. So all of this kind of region, all of these dispersed buildings are the library, and the library is the kind of greatest fountain of knowledge certainly on this continent, possibly in the whole world. It's not the greatest source of knowledge in the universe. That is the Library of Iro, the plane of knowledge. But certainly on this plane, there's a good chance that Saffat is the greatest place to go and find information. And before the kind of players decided they were going to cause an apocalypse, I had hoped that they would come here in pursuit of the Lost City of Gold, and they would kind of find information about that here. That can still be the case, but it's much harder to be like, yes, we're going to go and find the Lost City of Gold when the entire world is ending. Does make it rather more difficult. Kevin says you could have a voice of the Sun or something that sounds like Sean Connery, if that would help the players respect the king himself. I think that as soon as if the Sun King or whatever is behind him speaks with Sean Connery's voice, the players will just lose it immediately. But I do think that we could have an advisor that is Sean Connery. Like I've just spilt drink all over myself. An advisor that is very much like, yes, welcome to the Sun King's palace. Welcome, Moneypenny, to the Sun King's palace. I have spilled drink all over myself. See, do you see what the Sun King does? He makes a mess of absolutely everything. Alright, I caught it before we lost all of the Pepsi, but not before covering myself in it. Fortunately, it's not too bad to clean up. But yeah, we can definitely have an advisor-like character that speaks like Sean Connery. That would be a fun way to honour this. So let's go ahead and make the NPCs for the Sun King. Kevin, I nearly spat my Pepsi all over the place. How's your Sun King spilled his Pepsi? Oh God, no. Right. We are going to work on Sun King's core NPCs. My name is Pepsi, assistant to the Sun King. Oh my God, yes, Pepsi. Pepsi. Older human male assistant to the Sun King. How would we define Sean Connery's voice? Is it a lisp? Sean Connery's voice. Let's Google. Let's see whether we've got any taking voice from. I think it's just his accent, right? He didn't have any kind of vocal difference. No, I really didn't think that this is the way that world building was going to go, but I am happy it's gone there, because that is drags his S's. Yeah, it drags his S's. All the human male assistants of the Sun King. I believe it's called sibilance. Is it? Shibilance. Yeah. So he pronounces all his S's S sounds with sibilance. Pepsi. Yes, my name is Pepsi. assistant to the Sun King. The Sun King had lots of stinky pets, and when they die, he threw their bodies into a pit of quicksand. They are the Sun King's shrunken skunks. Oh yeah. Once served as a secret agent for the Sun King. So now we've got former James Bond, Sean Connery, servant of the Sun King. Okay, so probably want to put him in second position, and then Nasir. Nasir Sekma, Azimar, male, founded city. I'm just going to put scratch notes for this. Oh no, we'll just leave it as Azimar male because I can expand that later. Interesting twists. All humans in the city pronounce their S's with sibilants. That would be very funny. I am going to commit a cardinal sin, and I'm going to go to change my t-shirt real quick because I'm covered in Pepsi. So I'm going to throw us into the starting soon screen just for like 30 seconds. No, it's not that scene. That's the wrong scene. That's what we want. I'm back. And I'm no longer in Pepsi-soaked clothes. Okay. Yeah, cue topless Anto. Fortunately, there's a green screen here, so I've got the divider to change behind. Pepsi sounds like a Chinese name to me. Maybe it isn't Ashbourne. Almost certainly not. So that kind of Asian naming nomenclature, sort of China, Japan, around that region. I use that a lot for the Empire of Sengal, which is west, well west of this continent. So he could have been from there. We'll make a note of where can we make a note of that? All the human male assistants to the Sun King once served as a secret agent for the instead of the Sun King, we'll go to the Sengal Empire, because that is over on that west side. Pronounces all his S sounds with sibilants. That's how you spell sibilants. That is how you spell sibilants. So then we've got Nasir, we've got Pepsi, and then we need a couple more NPCs to go for the Sun King's court. A leader of the Sun King's Guard, absolutely. So we'll go leader of the Sun King's Guard. If they're going to be the leader of the guard, I'm thinking big and physically imposing. So for kind of race choices, I'm thinking Dragonborns, I'm thinking Goliath, Half-Orc, one of those. Ooh, a Leonin would be pretty cool. You know, the lion's mane is quite like the emblazon of a sun. So a Leonin would actually be awesome. Harris is guarded. Harris is perfect. Harris. So we want middle-aged male Leonin, leader of the Sun King's Guard. Leader of the Blazing Rays. I like the blazing part. The rays makes me think of like Blazing Rays barbecue. Why not be an evocation wizard? Brawn doesn't sound like a thing that would be happening in a City of Mages. That's a good point. And Leonin fits less into the Brawn than Dragonborn Goliath and half orc. Yeah, Blazing Rays for the guards. I like the blazing part, but the rays does make me think of like a barbecue joint. But something like the blazing spears, the blazing swords, the blazing noun. I like though. Leader of the blazing something, the Sun King's Guards. Personal guard. So I like the idea of there being separations and levels of kind of lawkeeping and defense. So a lot of it will be conducted by the Magical Protection Service, who will operate as kind of the police in the city, and then the blazing whatever will be his personal guard. Blazing wall, the blazing shields. I like shields, spears, blazing knights. Knights could be cool. I like blazing. I'll definitely make it in there, or blazing, or emblazoned, or something like that. We'll go like that. Just a blazing guard might be cool. Yeah. Yes, we are still in the Sun King's Court. And then for the fourth NPC, I do like it being a concubine. A concubine, a consort, mistress of some kind, or some kind of romantic interest. Or possibly queen. I don't know whether the Sun King is the type to enter into something like a marriage, because he is very much, I am the chosen one, I am going to save the world, I am divine. So I think that kind of a marriage is too much of a kind of equal partnership for someone on that kind of level. He would be like, I have no equals, I am the Sun King. A wand of counterspell would be cool, like a trigger loaded epic sleeve wand of counterspell that can just be burst out at any point. So if they're in a setting where it's kind of diplomatic and you're not supposed to have weapons, and someone goes to try and pull a spell, you can just wand of counterspell out. That would be super cool. And I'm going to add that as a detail. Sealed wand of counterspell. Counterspell is a spell, so we need to make sure it's italicized. 15 degrees. Go ahead. What's that? Blazing Furnace. The Blazing Shield. So far of everything, shield or spear is what I've liked so much. Should he have a place with an anti-magic ward or something? Yes, there will be the Blazing Hand. The Blazing Hand is pretty good. The Blazing Saddles. Should he have a place with an anti-magic ward or something? Yes. Some kind of anti-magic ward will be in the description for sure. The Blazing Hand is cool. I like that. We will go with the Blazing Hand. And obviously then their symbol can just be a fiery fist. Blazing Hand. So it's a kind of an odd situation building out information for something like this gazetteer, because obviously it's a product that is meant to give an overview. So going into too much detail runs kind of counter to the purpose of it being an introduction to and a vague, evocative example of a city in a magazine. In the future, I would very much like, maybe, a year or two down the line, to take kind of the gazetteer information that's been published in SideQuest throughout those years and put it into an Ashk campaign setting. I have kind of struggled with that idea a little bit up until now, because I thought that there wasn't a hook to kind of be like, here is why you want to play in this setting, because up until now it's very intentionally been designed to be, here is the desert version of generic Fantasyland. But I think that this progression where the players have caused the apocalypse could be a really nice kind of twist on it, and be like, okay, here is the setting guide for Ashk, generic desert Fantasyland, mid-apocalypse. And the mid-apocalypse is kind of the hook that you go, okay, that's really cool. I want to play in that setting. I get all my desert vibes and all my kind of Egyptian, Middle Eastern inspired content through the lens of the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket. So I will come back and think about the kind of romantic interest for the Sun King. But I think that should cover us for the Sun King's Court. We can start thinking about the Library of Saffat. Let's do a time check here. 22 minutes past. We'll go for a little longer. I don't want to go too late, otherwise I will be dead on my feet tomorrow. But we'll probably go another sort of 20-30 minutes. We'll start the wrap up fairly soon. Round it out to a kind of a 2-hour stream, probably a good length. How do the mages think about their non-magic king? So the king is magic. So I need to remember to make a note of that. So sorcerer. He is the sorcerer king. So he does have magic. So I'll make a note of that just so that it is written down somewhere. And when I go back and kind of rework this part here, it will mention the fact that he's the sorcerer king. I don't know whether I had mentioned it by the Sun King. So up until now, I'd always referred to him as the sorcerer king in all previous references to him. And I think in the issue 1 of SideQuest that gives a brief overview of Kadim, he is referred to as the sorcerer king because that's what he has been up until now. But as I said, I'm in this weird transient state where kind of just about to go into a time jump in which he will be crowned the Sun King. So I will probably rework that a little bit to kind of make that present day be kind of his coronation. So reference him being the Sorcerer King who's just been crowned as Sun King. And see how that all flows together. Let's see. I will do library stuff off stream. We've got some information on the NPS here, kind of information on how the post office works. We've got some information on some of the different schools: divination, evocation, illusion, transmutation. So the illusion school is made in an old theatre, and part of the kind of academic assessment of the students is they have to perform illusion magic. They have to put on like a menagerie, a carnival, a kind of magician show for people to be assessed and kind of graduate as illusion magicians and illusion wizards. The transmutation school is gilded in a layer of gold because they can transmute things, and it turns them into a bit of a joke among the other schools. You know, they're like, oh, we teach you how to bend the elements, we teach you how to raise the dead. They're over here just making their building gold. Would there be a non-magic faction somewhere causing trouble? Possibly. Quite possibly. I don't know how successful they would be, because this is a whole city of mages. There is a higher concentration of mages here than anywhere else in the world, and the majority of citizens and landowning residents in the city would be magic users. So a non-magic faction kind of coming in trying to disrupt that would have a real bad time, because there's so much magic on display. One of the things that I want to do with the inn or the tavern or the restaurant. Thanks for stopping by, Claire. Much appreciated. One of the things I want to do with the Rampart Griffin is put together a small menu of kind of magical foods. And it's something I want to expand on in a future issue. I want to put together either a full tavern that is like, here is detailed descriptions on like 24 NPCs, as well as like a really detailed menu that you can put into your game. I don't think there's going to be space or time to put that here, because it would really disrupt the flow of kind of learning about Kadim, but it's something I definitely want to put in a future issue. There is absolutely a stigma for non-magical users. So magic users are the only people that can own property. They're the only people that can vote in the democratic system such that it is, not that there is much of one. They are the only people that can kind of properly participate in the judiciary. And then non-magic users are very much kind of shunned. But protecting against magic and forgetting to protect against non-magic is kind of does play into the hubris of the wizard. So that's an interesting thing that I think could definitely be explored. So yeah, a group of non-magic users probably is likely. No, this isn't World Anvil. This is in layout in Affinity Publisher to go in issue 3 of my magazine SideQuest. So the king was shown this land in a vision. Is there a reason why? Is the magic stronger here? Originally, there was a reason why. So prior to kind of the players throwing everything up in the air, what I had thought is that the Sun King came here thinking he was being led by a divine voice, but he was actually being led by some kind of ancient magical being that dwells beneath what would eventually become the Library of Saffat, and has been kind of manipulating the king, and the king's really a puppet king. I don't know whether that is what I want to do anymore, because the players have caused the apocalypse. I do like the idea of the Sun King being someone who might not be the most likable person, but does genuinely believe and want to go out there and beat back the darkness. So I don't know whether there is going to be a more nefarious undertone behind the Sun King, or whether it really genuinely is going to be he was shown a vision by the goddess of the sun to found a city here on the ruins of this old city, and that one day he genuinely would be crowned a king and go out and fight the darkness. I'm unsure which way I want to go on that yet. And that's not something that necessarily has to be resolved for this issue, because as I say, I am interested in the idea of expanding the lore of the world in a future issue to be like, okay, you've had a couple issues that set up Ashk as a setting and kind of gives you the background of it. Now here is the cataclysm that's going to change everything, and then going forward with that kind of apocalypse setting. and kind of writing an article to explain the reasonings that it's happened from my in-game point of view, as well as kind of giving some tips and advice on the kind of things that I am interested in exploring thematically when it comes to running an apocalypse, because I do think there are some key differences between a post-apocalypse setting and a during or mid-apocalypse. I think post-apocalypse is very void of hope, whereas mid-apocalypse, people still believe that there is a chance. Thanks for joining, Matt. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Have a nice evening. So I think that there's a lot to kind of be mined for, like, juiciness out of that kind of mid-apocalypse. Do you know much about Eberron? I have a hunch that you'd love the elves of that setting. I am vaguely aware of Eberron. I know that there has been the last war, and that there is kind of a level of magical steampunky type technology. That's about all I've read into it. I try to avoid some of the more iconic settings in D&D, because I like to homebrew stuff, and especially given that I am creating things like SideQuest, like the magazine, I try and keep myself somewhat divorced of official material, because I don't want too much of that to bleed into my world and then have to adjust it for my own publication, which is an issue that I ran into a little bit with my Pantheon originally. So several of the gods in my Pantheon were originally Pathfinder gods, because we started that campaign and I started building this world when I played Pathfinder. And I wholesale pulled some of those gods, like the Everlight started as Serenray, who is the Everlight in Pathfinder. And much like Matt Mercer had to do with Critical Role, once you start publishing content involving that homebrew world, you have to start divorcing those elements from the previously published things. It's one of those little kind of technical niggles that comes with doing this kind of thing. So, for example, let's go ahead and find it. The Thaumaturgy Brewery, wherever that is. Thaumaturgy Brewery. So there I had to specify Snakefolk, because UNT is in the list of product identity words in the Open Gaming License, which means you can't use it. So I have to say Snakefolk. So it's very much one of those weird situations. But if the elves of Eberron are somewhat Egyptian in their flavouring, it is something I'm very interested in checking out. I have started to read through some more of the officially published settings. So I read all of Theros last year when it came out, but I've forgotten a lot of it. So I recently picked up the special edition of Theros, the alternate cover. And I've been reading through that again just to kind of get some inspiration, particularly when it comes to the gods and the kind of stories that setting is interested in telling in the gods. So I will almost certainly pick up Eberron at some point and give that a read. Let's go ahead and where are we? We'll call it on the kind of writing component for now, and we'll spend kind of the last sort of 20-25 minutes doing Q&A, which is how I like to end the streams. I know that most of the times I stream, there's folks watching who've got questions that aren't necessarily related to what we've been doing in stream. So I like to kind of unwind in the stream and kind of play us out with a little bit of Q&A. So if you have questions about my setting, about anything we've not covered here, about advice or tips in general, anything I've done in videos, throw them into the chat and we will kind of unwind with some Q&A while I go through and figure out what else I've got to build out for this. So I've still got several locations that we need to kind of finish out. We need to sort the lodge, the Court of the Sun King, the library needs a little more adding to it, the tavern, the schools for abjuration, conjuration, and enchantment and necromancy. Excuse me. And then I've got another location section. So there's things like a jeweler's and a couple of other taverns, the barracks, a herbalist. Those locations can just be, here is a list of NPCs, here is a list of locations and NPCs you'll find in them. Because the stables as well, they don't need in-depth information. You know, the stables doesn't need as much information as the Sun King's Court, for example. How much of the magazine do you think is 5e orientated? How much is more easily usable with other systems? So most issues are probably going to get close to a 50-50 mix. So this issue 3, for example, everything with the City of Mages, entirely system agnostic. If you're running a fantasy game, this Kadim will fit somewhere in your setting. New Conditions is 5e specific, because it is expanding the conditions and status effects of 5th edition. Power Words is kind of 5th edition specific, but would also be adaptable for things like Pathfinder or a bunch of other D20 systems that use the open game rules. And then the monster that's in here is going to have a 5th edition stat block, but all the lore and the art and all the juice, all the narrative stuff of it would apply to any fantasy game in which there are monsters. Issue 1 had the Gazetteer and an advice article, and then it had a monster and the Ranger of the Wild, so it was a 50-50 mix. And issue 2, what did issue 2 have? My brain is so filled with issue 3, I can't remember what was in issue 2. So issue 2 had information on making mechanics for true names. So this idea that mages and beings of power have a true name that they keep from people. Added some mechanics for that, but that could be adapted. There was an adventure in there that could have been adapted. There was the Gazetteer, which is a full pantheon, and then a time domain cleric. So I'm aiming for around a 50-50 mix most of the time with most issues. What's been the single biggest inspiration, the light bulb moment, which gave you the most content world building ideas? Excuse me. That's a really hard one. In terms of Ashk, issue 2 also had the time cleric. In terms of the feel I wanted to evoke in Ashk, I think there are 2 sources of inspiration, both films. Unfortunately, both Western films, which does create some issues when you're making a setting that draws from other cultures. But that would be the Mummy, the 1999 one, and the film National Treasure. So when I was thinking of the kind of themes that I wanted to play into and the kind of play that I wanted to run in Ashk, it was very adventure. So, you know, larger than life characters, the players go to different locations, go on an adventure, and adventure was very much what I was going for. We achieved some of that, but the players, as time has gone on, it's become much more obvious what the players want is much more almost like a classic D&D feel. They want to go out into the world and fight monsters. They want to harvest those monsters, kind of Witcher or Monster Hunter world style. Then they want to use parts of those monsters to make interesting magic items, and they are driven by the kind of, oh, magic items are super cool, let's use magic items. Mr. Moses says, how do you finish a city map? I've watched your guides, which are fantastic. I start and always get stuck on the building layout. Oh, I feel you there. So the map for Kadim took me about 2 days, not of constant work, but intermittent work. to do. And the way I started was I got the general shape by looking at my region map and thinking, right, okay, what would the shapes be for where I'm placing the city? Then I refed in the terrain, so all the coastlines and the kind of plateaus here, threw in a couple of bridges just at random, and then I started with the wall. So I decided how far out do I want the wall to be was, and then from there I chose some gate locations. So like here, I'd place a gate, and then I put 2 building blocks either side of it, and then I'd just start going in the directions of the building blocks until the terrain changed. So along here is a great example. I went to start with just in a line here until I kind of reached down this point, and then I thought, okay, it needs to turn and change in direction, and it was lots of little changes over time. So originally this whole block was one single thing, and I was like, that's far too many buildings. We need to put some streets and some alleyways in it. The 2017 one that Pazzy is referencing is the 2017 Mummy film, which is apparently awful. I didn't watch it because I was like, I do not want to change. I don't want to acknowledge that that's a thing. The scale of this map, I'm not 100% sure what the scale is, Bob. It is, I like to think that the city extends out over here to the west, and that this is just an isolated slice of the most important parts of the city. Because otherwise it would be a tiny blob on a huge selection of kind of background space. Hi Anto, love the content for the channel, patron here. When you're DMing, do you try and channel the quest into a narrative plotline that you have in mind, or do you tend to let the players free? That's a great question. I usually start with a hook and a vague idea of where I want to go. So let me think of an example that I've run fairly recently, which is difficult because we had a TPK not too far ago. So before our TPK, I knew that I wanted the players were down a path that would mean that they were going to do a prison heist. So I'd provided them with the hook of there is an NPC that you need information from that is in this prison. They agree to give you this information if you break them out of prison. And then I knew that they would try and break the NPC out of prison, and that we'd be going for a prison break style of session. But beyond that, I did very little planning, other than kind of figuring out, okay, what's the layout of the prison, and who are a couple key NPCs in the prison, and what are a few dramatic moments that could happen. So I knew it was fairly likely the players would try and get guard uniforms. So I was like, okay, if they get guard uniforms, it would be dramatic if another guard came up to them, didn't question that they were guards of the prison, and were like, right, okay, you two need to come with me for a different work duty. And the tension there would be, how long until we're found out? Or once the prison break happens, things are going to turn into chaos. What are those elements of chaos that we can play with? So what happens if a member of the party is seen and they escape? They then become a wanted criminal. Those kind of snowball effects. I was thinking big, vague ideas rather than minute details, because the players just throw minute details into the wood chipper and all your plans go to waste. So I always go plot hook and then a couple of ideas of where I think it's most likely the players will go. So if it's something they need to plan for, I try and think of, right, okay, what approaches will they take? And think of a couple of dramatic outcomes for them. And then it's just a lot of trying to think on my feet and throw things at them as is needed. Sometimes it goes better than other times. So the last week's session where they were trying to steal the Pi6 of Pandemonium, this Ark of the Covenant Pandora's Box world-ending device, I expected them to do recon. I wasn't expecting them. They went hard on the recon, which I wasn't expecting, and I had to kind of adjust to that. And then once they realized that a rival party had stolen this device, then they reacted, and I had to react to their reactions very quickly. So they started throwing fireballs. They started acting in very unpredictable ways, and I was like, I've got to deal with this. I hadn't planned for a combat today. Hey Flip, how's it going? Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. So in terms of where things are going in the future, I am considering bringing back the campaign diaries, which is something that people were very interested in at the time. The videos I was doing previously on campaign diaries didn't perform as well as I hope they would. And the way I was making them, it stopped being worth the time investment for the return. So previously I was scripting out the campaign diary, and then I was setting it up properly, and then filming it. And that took a lot of time and like a time investment. Which meant that eventually it became not worth doing a campaign diary. Whereas I am, now that the players have had a TPK and they've had this big cataclysmic event, and we're essentially starting a new campaign, even though there are some leftover characters and some left were in the same location and there's some shared elements, it's essentially a brand new campaign. So I think it would be good to pick up those campaign diaries again. And what I would do is I would film them very much like this. I would throw out my green screen, which doesn't take a minute, then turn the camera on, use OBS to film it, talk with no script, and just put it out. I may even do them as like live stream campaign diaries, if that is something that people would be interested in. That could actually be really fun. Having people pop in and ask questions about the events and kind of talk about that. That would be really fun. It's essentially a new campaign in the same setting. Most of the videos about map making looked at relatively similar maps, greenfields, mountains, rivers, etc. And I find it quite difficult to map other regions like deserts, archipelagos, etc. Have you got any tips? So the latest video I put out was on how to change the setting of the randomly generated Watabu maps. So I took the village maps that are generated very lush and green and used Photoshop to kind of alter the settings of them to a desert setting, but it would apply for almost any other type of environment. A lot of the case for deserts, a lot of the problem is deserts are big expanses of sand, and just a big orange blob isn't interesting to look at. So it's important to break that up with other features. So if you're going to have mountain ranges, you're probably going to have rivers near them. If you've got rivers, there's fresh water sources. If there's fresh water sources, there is greenery. So you don't have to have the flat orange desert. You can have those bands of green that follow the rivers, excuse me, and the kind of mountain ranges. And then, depending on how high magic setting you're running, you throw a load of magic into the mix, and then you can do whatever you want. You can have huge battle-scarred areas from magic explosions and kind of put icons for cities and all those kinds of things on your map. So if I go ahead and I'll fire up Legend Keeper, and we'll kind of look at the map of Ashk. So let me go into OBS and... Oh, that's me. Don't turn me off. There we go. Jump out to the Ashk level setting here. So Ashk is a desert, and the majority of the map is that dusty, yellowy, orange sand colour. But you can see how I've gone in and added colour variations. So we have light patches, dark patches, mid-tones, so that is not just one blank colour. I've dotted the kind of vast desert expanses with small hills and little isolated mountain patches to just make it so it's not quite as flat presenting. Added the mountains and the rivers and these green patches and the forested patches near these dense waterways all add visual interest to the map while you can keep it desert. For Archipelagos, I don't have an archipelago map, but what I do have is my previous campaign world, or campaign setting area, which is Valoroth. You can see that Valoroth is destroyed. So if we go ahead and click in here, this is an edited version of my map of Valoroth. And at the end of my last campaign, thanks to some poor decisions on the part of the players, they set off a magical nuke, which destroyed the country and created this like ripple of fault lines that turned the majority of the nation into an island chain. So what I did for this is I went in and I coloured my map as usual, so you get that colour variation. And then I went through and started adding in all of the little river inlets and the destroyed patches, all the little lakes and things that existed before now exist in those little islands, and it creates a completely different look to the map. This is an unfinished version of it. I would still like to go back and add in mountains where the mountains used to be, but obviously this is what happened at the end of the campaign, so I wasn't going to spend all that time making a really detailed version of the map because that's not where we're playing anymore. Excuse me. Mark says, have you ever had a situation where you put so much effort into an encounter you were really looking forward to, but then it was steamrolled and ended quickly? Yes, I have. Multiple times, I think. My most notable example is really early into my last campaign. The players were on the road and I wanted there to be this like questing knight that was going to try and duel and take down the party barbarian. And thanks to a critical hit and the barbarian being disgustingly strong and wielding a great axe, they utterly annihilated this questing knight in one hit, and then that was it. Session over. I expected that to be the meat of the session, kind of the duel and the fallout, maybe have a bit of talking, but just rolled a critical hit instantly, max damage, basically killed him in one hit. So I had to say to the players, well, that's all I really had prepared, so we're just going to roleplay for you arriving at your next location. Could you show how you structure your folders in the Legend Keeper wiki? Yes, I can do that. So let me collapse everything. Collapse all. So I have multiple mainline folders. So up top in the categories, I have rules, factions, Pantheon, adventures, and calendar, because those are the things I click the most. And then in just the main wiki, I have all of those, but I also have a section for my players, places, beings, and then a couple of others. So thanks to Legend Keeper's most recent update, you can now select which users can see what to what degree. You've got much more minute control of the privacy and visibility. So I've set up a compendium of everything that the players can see goes in the compendium. Masquerade, this is Legend Keeper. It is an online, it's a web-based with offline mode wiki solution for storing all the information about your campaign world. I do have a couple of different videos on the channel where I go kind of really into depth on everything that it's got. So yeah, for player focused information, I have the compendium. So everything in here, for the most part, the players can see. So I have a section for the history of Ashk, for things about Ashk culture, the races that they'll find in Ashk. So I have a bunch of races they can see, a bunch of hidden ones, information on all the Pantheon, and then information on the factions, which they can't currently see, and I reveal as they need. And then I have a section for players where I go in and track their information. Unfortunately, there's almost no information from here because we just rolled up new characters, and then they all died or got defeated. So I'll drop the link, legendkeeper.com. I'm just going to mute myself and cough. Oh boy, howdy. Excuse me. So in the players section, I usually keep information on what quests they're going on, and I make that public so that they can see that. And then I have pages for each player, and in each of those pages, I have a, let's see if I can find one. I haven't set any of these up because they're all for new players. And almost immediately we changed direction. But each of these player pages is set up so that only the player in question can see the information. Sorry about that, folks. The dog was running rampant, so I just had to shout at the dog and be like, "Get on out!" Each of these pages is set up so that the individual player can see them, so they have a place to store their information and store their specific information. And then I have kind of details on all my places and the NPCs and all that kind of good stuff. Legend Keeper is a really useful tool. I highly recommend it. It's how I've been tracking my campaign now for best part of a year. So I've run through 48 sessions on Legend Keeper, pretty much, I think. Maybe a few less. But basically for the last year, I've been using Legend Keeper, and it's been really helpful to kind of organize all my thoughts, and particularly for maps and pins. I really enjoy it for maps and pins. So if we go back to the project home and pull up the Ashk map. So given that my players have caused the apocalypse, so they were in the city of Hera, which was once kind of the capital city of Ashk, and the Parthian Empire had invaded the city and kind of taken it over. They were there. They had to go to this estate and steal the Pisces of Pandemonium, the Pandora's box. And as I say, a different faction managed to grab it first and opened it when they were having a fight somewhere around here. And the knock-on effect of that is an apocalypse level event. So we're going to have all kinds of changes happening to the world based on that. When you're world building, do you prefer starting wide and zooming in the small paces, detailing your world, or going the other way around? It depends. So the approach I take now is start wide, then go narrow. But I take that approach because I have a set and solid gaming group, and we meet every week, and we have done for the past 4 years now, pretty consistently. The only time we ever really miss a session is if I'm not there. So I have a level of reassurance to be able to go, right, okay, it's worth me putting all my time into this and all that time into the big picture stuff, because I am almost certain that everyone's going to turn up and we are going to get to play it. If I was going to run for a new group, I would choose a very small location and develop that out before expanding so that I don't potentially waste all of that time. If you have a group that you play with regularly and you kind of have that locked in, then I really enjoy the process of starting from the macro level, because I can look at the big picture and get inspiration from that. and then drill down into the micro level and go, right, okay, the players are going to start in Azim. Let's really narrow in on Azim and figure out what makes that place tick. So one of the things I'm looking forward to most about this kind of rebooted Apocalypse campaign is the players are going to get to experience places they've been before in a new context. So they're going to get to see the cities that they'd visited before and see what those places are like during the apocalypse. So one thing I had in mind with Jabal, for example, which is the city they were in before they TPK'd, and before we kind of started on this new path. There's a lot going on in here that I think would make this the ideal place for a resistance in an apocalypse. So there is a big prison filled with kind of gung-ho guards and filled with inmates that could be cannon fodder to fight off the corruption. There is a tower full of gangs, and at the very top of it there is an Azamar, a Deva kind of celestial group protecting an ancient artifact site. So I like the idea of, if after the apocalypse or during the apocalypse they come back to Jabal, it was previously quite a rigidly lawful city. All the kind of violence and crime was contained in these two places. I like the idea of all the prisoners being free, of the gangs being now soldiers, and the kind of corrupt or the imprisoned now more running things. I really like the idea of Jabal being a place where devils have got a foothold. So part of what I want to incorporate with this apocalypse is the idea of it being chaos and corruption and being a lot of demons. And that would almost certainly draw the attention of devils because of the blood war. And I like the idea of a group of devils coming to the material plane and being like, right, we're going to help you because we want to stop the demons. And there being this cohort of devils alongside this cohort of Deva in Jabal. And then, of course, there is the Beholder in Jabal. So having kind of this trifecta of angels and devils and a Beholder all kind of joined forces as reluctant partners in this war against the chaos. I think there's a lot of spice that could be there. But yeah, I would be very interested to know what people think about campaign diaries becoming live streams, and doing short little, maybe an hour tops live stream each week to just be kind of, here's the campaign diary update, answer some questions, give you folks a rundown of what happened that week, and then they go unlisted into a playlist, because part of the problem is that they weren't performing very well in the kind of analytics sense. And as I'm going to mention in a video coming soon, when you're kind of bringing money in from the YouTube grind, it's hard to make changes to things that could impact that, and throwing the algorithm off is one of those things. So doing them as live streams and then putting them in an unlisted playlist that people can find on their own, I really like that idea, because I enjoyed doing the campaign diaries, and I really enjoy doing the streams as well, and kind of combining the two could be a really fun way for us to get some engagement. We can chat, which is always fun. Let's go ahead and do that. So hello. So we can chat, which is fun. My hair is still wet. I had a shower before the stream and my hair is still wet. And it would be really cool. Yeah, there's animations between the flicking between the scenes. Mr. Moses says you could potentially look into cutting the live streams up into videos like the DM there does. That is something that I could do. Part of it is a kind of time management thing. So taking a live stream and editing it is a time investment, which means it's time I'm not putting into something else. So it would be a way to get extra content onto the channel, but if that content doesn't perform, it doesn't make it worth it for the time investment. So it's something I have thought about, but I think that at least initially, just kind of live streams for the campaign diaries could be a really cool thing, because we get to talk some world building, get to talk about what's happening in my game, and do the campaign diaries, which is something that a lot of people really do call for. Like in the audience survey, which I'm actually going to link like right now. Let me go and grab a link to it. Because every year, well, last year and now this year, I run an audience survey, copy link, paste, to kind of get your feedback and find out what you're enjoying, what you want to see more of. A lot of what people have asked for is the campaign diaries. It's one of the most common thing people ask to see come back. So live streams would be a really good way to do that. And it would be a lot of fun. So I'll almost certainly bring that back in some way. I don't know when it'll be. Unlikely to be next week, because I imagine next week is going to be our kind of semi-session zero to kind of soft reboot the campaign. But in a couple of weeks' time, maybe once I've got a couple sessions worth of kind of story beats to talk about, that would be cool to do a live stream like that. It's a relatively low impact thing to do. I just have to throw out the green screen and throw on the camera and just chat to you, which means it doesn't take a great toll on me, because setting up and making all the scripted videos can be a real drain some days. And then doing things like this is much easier, but the ideal time is kind of 9-10 p.m. on a Friday night. But we will figure it out. Hi, Nicholas. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you enjoy. We are a little bit over 2 hours on the stream now. So I think that it is probably time that we wrapped things up. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed it and got some inspiration from it. If we are going to start up doing the campaign diary live streams, I do hope that you all join me for them, because that would be awesome. Nicholas says, I know you're more DAM focused, but I'd love your take on traits, flaws, bonds, and ideals. Make a video of it. I do have a how to create a background video that kind of goes into a little bit of them. And I think that there will be more player-focused content coming in the future, just to have a wider variety of content. But yeah, I'm going to transition us out into the end screen so that afterwards I can put cards and things here with fancy YouTube magic. But thank you, everyone, for joining. Be sure to join us in the Discord. If you haven't already, please do check out the audience survey that I have posted up in the chat, and also check out the Patreon where you can get SideQuest, which is what we've been working on today. And until next time,